Our final speaker, last but not least, Professor Umaid Safi. He's a professor of Iranian studies at Duke University. Yes, audio is on. Specializing in Islamic spirituality and contemporary thought. Omid is committed to intersection of spirituality and social justice. He has published extensively on the foundational sources of Islam and Sufism. His Politics of Knowledge in Pre-Modern Islam is an analysis of the intertwined dynamic of religious and political discourses in medieval Iran. His Memories of Muhammad is a popular biography of the Prophet Muhammad. His most recent book is Radical Love, Teachings from the Islamic Mystical Tradition. His next books are on the great Sufis, Rumi and Karagani. He leads retreats and online courses through Illuminated Courses. Omid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, dear friends. Thank you for the time that you have taken. Thank you for my very learned colleagues for joining us. I want to begin with a reminder from the Nigerian writer, novelist, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who warns us about the dangers of singular narratives. And what happens when we adopt a singular narrative and the complexity and the nuance of human life ends up being reduced? In the age of binary perspectives in which we live, that call and that caution is all the more urgent today. We have the word sanctions in the title of our gathering, and there are some who would say that the primary reason for the suffering of Iranian people is because of the cruel American-imposed sanctions on the people of Iran, which have seen food prices go up 70% in this last year, and the Iranian currency lose half of its value. Therefore, they would place the bulk of the fault at the feet of American colonialism, perhaps rightly so. And then there are some who would say, no, 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 it's not a matter of sanctions, it's a matter of the corruption of the Iranian regime. I'm urging us to strive for a model of nuance that is perhaps lacking from so much of our political, ethical, and moral discourse today, which says multiple factors can be true at the same time. It is not, in this case, sanctions or the corruption of the Iranian regimes, it's sanctions and. Multiple factors can be true at the same time. The Iranian regime, as we will talk about, has displayed unimaginable barbarity in terms of how it has treated its own citizens. The way that Iranian citizens have been shot and killed in the course of these demonstrations, and for much of the last 47 years, that has to be spoken to, as my colleagues here already have done so. And to also insist that the United States is involved in a colonial project in the Middle East and around the world, from Venezuela to Greenland, to Iran, and what have you, is not to merely parrot the discourse of the Islamic Republic. It is to hold multiple truths at the same time. So that's the general orientation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for your permission to share a couple of images. Can you all see this? Can you see these images? Great. So I'm not some objective speaker standing on the cloud of impartiality. That little boy on the left is me. I grew up in Iran until the age of 14, and I left Iran. And over the course of the last 41 years, I've spent 3 weeks in my ancestral homeland, a place that I love dearly, a place that I have hundreds of family members, and a place that I continue to study every single day. That experience of exile has opened up many opportunities, and it is a painful one. when we see the divides between the people in Iran, the regional tensions, and the diaspora community, it's important to realize that these conversations are not merely academic, they're quite visceral, they're familial, and the level of pain from which many people speak has to be taken into consideration alongside discussions of larger geopolitical factors, exactly as Nargis called us to. In the last month, we have seen the largest demonstrations that we have seen in Iran since the 1978-79 revolution. Iran has a long history of popular protest, both preceding and after the Iranian Revolution. The demonstrations started out as an economic protest, and then around that fateful weekend of January 8th and 9th, the numbers grew and there was violence that erupted out. We are still trying to figure out exactly the number of people killed. The number itself is intensely political. And as we might talk about in the Q&A, it actually has a lot to do with the numbers of the fatalities of Palestinians in Gaza. And so we've seen an escalation of the projected numbers, but the Iranian regime itself has acknowledged that thousands of Iranians have been killed. And the images that are coming out of Iran are absolutely shattering, horrific. There was a video that I saw of a father who is walking around the dead bodies calling out for his son, Seper. And any of us who are parents, and if you're not a parent, you're somebody's baby. That agony is unbearable and unimaginable. Um, Amnesty International, which sometimes is late to the game, but usually fairly credible. They have come and they had put out a call for the massacre of protests demanding global diplomatic action. And I want to underline that word diplomatic. We want to ask the question, where's the place for diplomacy in a world where law, consensus, morality, and international governance are on thin ice? And some Iranian academicians around the US have started to compile verifiable names and faces. It's important that we see those whose lives have been stolen from us, not as nameless numbers, but as real life human beings. I want to really center their humanity and their suffering. Uh, a lot of young folk, men and women, in all the provinces. And then, of course, we have the American president jumping into the midst of this, calling on January 13th for the Iranian patriots to keep protesting and take over the institutions. Um, and help is on its way. And two things stand out from that message of Trump. One, the new slogan, MIGA, make Iran great again. Because, of course, now we're done making America great again. Are we great yet? I hope you like the result of our greatness. So now it's time to go and make the rest of the world great in our image. If you watched President Trump's full video remarks from which this comment on his social network came from, you would see that he also draws an analogy between the reign of the Ayatollahs in Iran and what would have happened to America if he were not selected as the president. Um, that MIGA slogan is now one that we're seeing being adopted by some Iranians in the diaspora, Iranian monarchists who favor the restoration of the former Shah of Iran's son. And so these kind of posters are ones that we see in the diaspora, though not so much in Iran itself. And as predictable as things can be in platforms like the Wall Street Journal, there's a discussion that, oh, it would not be such a terrible thing if the old colonial game of divide and conquer of Iran were to take place. This is, of course, as old as Palestine, as old as the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1917, as old as the fracturing of the former empires of West Asia. And those of us who know Iranian history are familiar with the legacy of such a plan to divide up Iran under a British and a Russian zone. Now, the Iranian regime, being the repressive regime that it is, shut off internet famously, and nature abhors a vacuum. And so the issue of whose image, whose footage, and whose narrative would get to come out became an intensely and hotly debated and contested message. The Iranian regime was releasing its own set of images of pro-government rallies, showing women holding images of the supreme leader, highlighting the attacks on mosques that had taken place and what have you. And this spilled over to the realm of popular culture. Remember Edward Said telling us that culture is politics. And so the great makeup mogul, Hoda Katan, who's been one of the most successful businesswomen, selling makeup products to women with brown undertone skin, shared this following footage, which led to a massive backlash from her supporters, and in particular, Iranians. We are now, of course, now living in 2.5 years of the Israeli genocide against Palestinians. We've all seen Trump's plan of establishing the new um, Riviera on Gaza because he knows a good real estate deal when he sees one. And it's important to also realize that in Israel itself, on the pages of Haaretz, more or less their New York Times, there's very open discussions about the ways in which what is happening in Iran are also places that Israeli interests are involved in. So Haaretz ran an extensive um, exploration on how they hope to see Reza Pahlavi return as the Shah of Iran. And in the Jerusalem Post, the Persian account of Mossad, the Israeli surveillance secret police, recorded messages, با هم به خیابانها بیایید, come together to the streets, O people of Iran, the time has come. We are with you, not from far and oral, we're with you in the battlefield. And Jerusalem Post and other Israeli newspapers reported on this as well. Does this mean that the demonstrations that we're seeing in Iran are an Israeli Mossad project? No. We can hold multiple truths at the same time. We can hold the truth that says the majority, vast majority of the demonstrations are led by people of Iran who have genuine economic and moral and political grievances against their own government, and the Israelis have a vested interest in destabilizing Iran and fomenting violence. Both things can be true. Furthermore, the chief of Israeli Mossad, David Barnea, has said, we're going to continue to be in Iran just like we have been. You know, sometimes I do question, why are they so open about this? But that's beyond my pay grade. And of course, the so-called crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, very chummy with Netanyahu, appreciating Israel's support for the Iranian people, and so on. In this way, he marks a very drastic departure from his father who towards the end of his life, had very critical things to say about the pro-Israel lobby in the US compared to his son, who appears in front of the same organizations.
You.
And Reza Pahlavi's wife, Yasmin Pahlavi, famously posted on Instagram a picture of an Israeli female soldier with the hashtag Zan Zendegi Azadi, women, life, and freedom. Um, if this is a model of women, life, and freedom, well, that's a remarkable departure from the rights for which Iranian women themselves have been demonstrating and continue to demonstrate against. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has tweeted about this. The Iranian regime is in trouble. Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets, also to every Mossad agent walking beside them. Again, these are public documents. We don't have to believe in conspiracy theory, but we can take seriously to analyzing the public words of these people. And I'll let you read the commentary of the uh, commentaries and the bottom of the tweet on the right. Now, one of the interesting aspects of this age of social media is the way in which there are some rather bizarre social media campaigns that we're seeing. One of which is, these are in diaspora, not in Iran itself, but Iranians who actually view Trump as a kind of liberator, calling him by the affectionate titles of Hazrat Trump and Amu Trump, Uncle Trump. At some point, as we have to wonder, do these people look at what's happening in Minneapolis? Do they see what Trump has said about the murder of Alex Pretty? Is this somebody who advocates democracy in America, much less in Iran? And Didimjan, I'll ask for about 3 more minutes if I can to finish things up, if I may. Um, and again, we are now living in an age of AI where AI is not just simply amplifying news, it's also creating it. And these are important artifacts. And this says more about the Iranian diaspora than it says about Iranians in Iran. But AI generated war imagery, which essentially is reading Trump as the second coming of the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi. So saying that, well, if Mahdi, instead of coming from the place that he's supposed to come from, Jamkaran, what if he comes from DC? So religious symbolism and imagery is not absent, even if it is adopted, adapted, perhaps perverted, but it's still part of the Iranian discourse. Trump continues to talk about the massive armada heading towards Iran, just as we saw with Venezuela. Once their leader was kidnapped, the conversation became about oil. And now all of a sudden, we're not hearing anything from Trump on the issue of demonstrations. And I want to end with a reminder of the role of poetry and music. Poetry and music are as central to Iranian identity as any factor. And one of the realities that has shaped the lives of people, in particular women in Iran over the last 47 years, are the restrictions that are regularly placed on something as simple as people singing in the street. You can do it in certain neighborhoods, but not in all. And on the right, on the left, you get to see an example of the kind of regular, everyday Iranian woman with a beautiful gift for voice. if I were to let the whole video play, you would see that at the end of it, there's whistling sounds coming because the moral police are coming. And so they have to restrict their singing. And then that same video is now posted on social media accounts of Iranians in diaspora. And this is a constant refrain that we see. We are not Arabs, we are Persian, right? There's this old resurfacing of many xenophobic Iranian trends, which were fomented in the early part of the 20th century. And I'll end with a reminder of how Iranian protest, whether against foreign imposition or for reform from within, and even in favor of their current government, it doesn't get away from tapping into the symbols of music and poetry. And what's interesting is that they're oftentimes tapping into the same set of symbols. So here is a beautiful song. I'm going to end with this. And this is one that was composed, it's Symphonie Khorramshahr. It was composed as to commemorate the heroic, perhaps, defense of Iranians against the invasion of Iraq. And if you track that same melody, you see many Iranians of different political aspirations putting up imagery on social media using that same sampling of music. I think what I would love to end with and open it up for Didem's comments and the questions from our wonderful audience is simply the question, is there a way in which we can center the lives and the experience of people in Iran, their humanity, their dignity, their suffering, economically, morally, their yearning for freedom and for beauty, without necessarily falling into the trap of supporting perhaps the greatest threat to democracy that America has seen indigenously in this last century, as well as the nefarious ambitions of an Israeli state which still has the blood of Palestinians dropping from its hands. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. And thank you all for your contributions. I will